Welcome everybody to today's live stream on improvising on Key to the Highway. So drop a line in the chat just to let me know that everything looks like it's broadcasting okay. If the sound's all right, if you can hear the guitar and hear what I'm saying as enough or as much as you'd want to, and I will jump right in. So I'm playing this tune in the key of E, and if you don't know just sort of the basic background of this song, like most people, I learned about this song first from the Layla record, where Duane Allman and Eric Clapton play this epic version of this tune. Pretty sure that Eric Clapton got the idea for this tune like he got the idea for a lot of tunes from Freddie King, but the song goes back to the 30s. It was not written by Big Bill Broonzy, but he played guitar on the original session with Jazz Gillum, who originally wrote the song. How Mr. and Mrs. Gillum came to name their son Jazz is beyond me. It seems very prescient given the career that the man had. But Big Bill Broonzy played on the Jazz Gillum version and then recorded his own version shortly after. I think, like within a year or two, maybe even a matter of months. And so that was kind of the definitive version. And the Jazz Gillum version, I think, if I remember this right, from when I did this last time, when I talked about this years ago for a True Fire blog that I did on the song. Pretty sure that the original Jazz Gillum version is actually a 12-bar blues, and I think it's Big Bill Broonzy who turned it into an 8-bar blues. But regardless, for most people, because of the ubiquity of Clapton and the Layla record, it's one of the first 8-bar blues most people learn. And I think the Layla version is actually an A, but I'm going to do it in E today. I think there also might be, the Clapton Unplugged version might be in E. Don't remember. But what I'm doing is playing with a steady bass style. So the chord progression is just E. So a bar of E, a bar of B7, a bar of A7, another bar of A7. That's the first 4 bars. And then back to E, bar of B7, and E, and then B7. So basically E, B, A, and then E, B, E, B. And there's different, there's turnarounds you can put in at the end and different things like that. But that's the gist. And it's a great tune to work out improvising ideas on because the chords change quickly. And so if you want to work on starting to address the chord changes one by one, as opposed to just kind of like pouring a pentatonic scale over the whole thing, you get more chances to quickly work on changing from chord to chord than you might playing on a 12-bar blues. But what I'm going to do today is go through basically 10 steps to improvising. And that sounds like a lot maybe, but it's really three big ideas, and then within each of them there's some detail. So just to give you an overview, we're going to look at phrasing first, and the idea that your phrasing can be cumulative, so that we can start with something really simple like the pentatonic scale, but if you think about the way you phrase, the rhythmic ideas you use, you can get a lot of mileage just out of the pentatonic scale. Then we'll move on to looking at how to address specific chord tones so that your playing has a little more color, and so the individual chords kind of pop out as you play over the tune. And we'll do that by looking at how to add the major pentatonic scale into the mix and how to use the blues scale and the major pentatonic scale together to form something that I think of as the swing scale, which I've talked about a lot in other electric guitar lessons, but it can apply to fingerstyle too. Then the third thing we'll look at is chord voicings. I already talked in the Dominant Dozen lesson that's on the channel about finding chord voicings by string set, like top 3 strings or the 6th string, 4th string, and 3rd string. So we'll look at how to apply that to improvising and how to drop in chords as part of what you're doing. And then finally, we'll just look at how to use all of those things to put together a solo that builds over time. Because one of the trickier things about improvising is how to improvise and not feel like you're running out of steam or that you don't have any ideas or that your solo just kind of like, goes out with a whimper. So that's the plan. So for each one of those categories, so we'll look at phrasing first, got 3 different ideas under phrasing, 3 ideas for how to use chord tones, 3 ideas for how to use chord voicings, and then finally just looking at how to put that all together. Even if you just get through the first 3 ideas, just the phrasing ideas alone, I think probably have enough information to really have an impact on the way that you're soloing. And so if you download the PDF in the link right underneath the video, I wrote out a solo just using the ideas in the first few, in sort of like using the first section, like the phrasing ideas. So that's kind of what we'll work towards first, and then I'll get into some of these chord tone and chord voicing ideas. And I'm just going to kind of crank it today because I found that when I looked back later at the last lesson, there was a lot of this and a lot of like close-ups of my rapidly graying goatee. So there's no need for that. I'll try to eyeball the feed from here. I do see that there's a lot of familiar names and folks from all over the place, and that is really great to see. Yes, I would really enjoy a virtual beer from the Netherlands right about now. And I see there's people from as close as Austin, like my pal Michael Turner. Good to see you. So anyway, let's get rolling with that. And if you got questions, we'll have time for that. You can drop them in as we go. A lot of times the questions kind of drift up the feed and then I don't see them. So I'll just sort of open it for questions. You can post them now, but I might not necessarily see them later. So I'll just sort of announce that we're going to do questions, and you can post them again when that happens. And in the meantime, feel free to chat amongst yourselves if you want to while we're going. Okay, that's the plan. So, key to the highway. Been over the chord progression. So the idea of phrasing, I think, is super important because, like I said, you can take something very simple like the pentatonic scale and make it sound cool by thinking about what you're doing rhythmically. So just to start with playing in E, if we've got the pentatonic scale, E, G, A, B, D, and E. So root, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, root. Right? We can start off and all that's happening is we're playing a phrase that leads up to the downbeat. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So the first time the thumb comes in at the beginning is that pinch on the root on top. So, and you could practice just that over the thumb. And getting it to come in when the thumb's already going is definitely tricky. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And you need to look at where the pinches are happening. So when you're playing thumb and fingers, and when you're playing notes in between. So basically pinches are on anything you're saying a number for. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. There's a downbeat, there's a pinch, and 1. And then there's another pinch on 1. So when you're trying to work out rhythmic things, it's good to remember the thumb is kind of the beat. It's the metronome, it's the downbeats. And whatever you're pinching is happening on the downbeat. And whenever you're playing in between, that's happening on the offbeats or the ands. And I went over this a lot in a lesson called the horizontal 3-step. And I didn't post a link to that, but I will do so afterwards. So like underneath the video, you can see a link to that. So there's the basic idea, just that idea of a pickup phrase, a phrase that leads into the downbeat. And you might answer that on your way to the 5 chord. 2, 3, 4, and now here comes the B7, right? So we got a kind of call and response idea already. And people talk a lot about call and response in the blues. And you may have soaked up all of this by ear and just sort of intuitively got it, but it's not a bad idea to kind of just specify and quantify what's going on so you can do it on purpose. And so here we've got a phrase and then another phrase that answers it. And there's something effective about basically the answer to a phrase seems to work the best if it's either shorter or longer than the original phrase. If you just answer with the same rhythm the next time, that's okay, but if you kept doing that, start to feel too repetitive, right? It's kind of like if you just kept saying the same phrase over and over again verbally, like, if you just kept saying, you know what I mean? 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 So, phrase, and then a shorter one. Now that you could repeat. That sounds cool. And of course, you don't have to play the same notes with the same phrasing. You can start taking that phrasing and looking for different things. Right? And so once you've got that rhythmic idea, with that sort of effectiveness of leading into the downbeat and then answering it with a short response, you can start to pour all different kinds of notes into it. One of the questions that comes up a lot is like, how do I build a vocabulary of blues licks? Well, you can go and listen to a bunch of records, and I recommend that you do, and try to figure out what people are doing and transcribe it and or just figure it out or get as close as you can. You don't have to get it perfectly. Just absorb what's going on. But also, like, you can take a lick and go, well, that lick seems to work. What makes it work? Well, part of it's the note choice, and some of it's the phrasing, that and 4 and 1. So then you can just take different notes from the same scale and just start experimenting and see how putting different notes into that rhythm works. So that's the first idea, is just that idea of an opening phrase and a shorter answer. So that's idea number 1. Next idea. I've been doing this already, but I'm going to talk specifically about what it is. And that's the idea of targeting the root. And by that I mean targeting the root of the chord you're on. So landing your phrase on a root. So in this case, we're landing on an E when we're on the E chord. And then this shorter phrase is landing on a B, which is the root of B7. Now if we do this, we land on E again, which is a chord. It's part of the A chord, but it's not the root. And it's cool, it works, but let's just be really specific right now about landing on our roots. Right, so you could land there. There's the root A. But maybe you want to try to find a lick right? Maybe you want the contour of the lick, the shape of the lick, to lead you more directly to that root. You can also start to think about these phrases cumulatively. So if you open with this idea, you can take that same opening phrase now and draw it out so that it lasts long enough to get you to the root of the A. Okay? Now that's really satisfying. We got this short lick. We got an even shorter response. But now we're going to answer all of that. Same kind of pickup, but yeah, so that's all pentatonic notes. So 5th, flat 7, root, flat 3rd, root, 5, flat 7, root, 5. That's the 4th. I'm talking about all these notes relative to the pentatonic scale, but that's the root A of the A chord. Okay, so now we've gone through the first 4 bars. Now we're going to, it's cumulative because we're going to now go back to our opening idea, but draw it out. And that's an idea that's easy to remember, and it's not that hard to execute, because once you've played your first lick, the next couple of licks are sort of, they have a certain inevitability to you trying to come up with them, and to the person hearing it, hearing a kind of internal logic to what's going on. So targeting the roots, there's only 3 of them right now. There's the E, right? And there's the B. And you hear, and you're like, oh, why doesn't this sound like, right? Like, what's the difference? And it's that, I think of it as the idiomatic stuff, right? It's the guitar stuff that makes it beyond just the notes. It's the way you play the notes. Some people call it articulations, like how do you play the notes? How do you articulate them? And so slides. So if you're going into the root, that's technically the same note. It's an E, right? But now it's the high string and the second string slid into the high string. That sounds a lot groovier. That's got more oomph. Right? Pull-offs, that's an articulation, hammering on, as opposed to picking every note. Slides, hammer-ons, pull-offs, bends, those are all idiomatic moves. Those are all guitaristic things that make it sound more like music. We'll focus just on slides right now. That's a really useful one. If you want to hear a lot of these, go listen to Guitar Slim. That was kind of one of his signature moves. And then the other one is, instead of playing the open B string, you can slide on the 3rd string from the 2nd fret to the 4th fret. Right? Because that's cool, but this is really cool. So you get the same notes, but it sounds more guitaristic. And so you can put them together. Right? And I'm putting a little bit of a quarter tone bend on the flat 3rd of the B, because I really want to hear almost the major 3rd, which isn't in the pentatonic scale, the major 3rd of B. Right? But if I just play the bright, that's going to sound square, right? There's like only so much of that you want. Right? If I did this. But cool. So it's the sound of the flat 3rd going towards the major 3rd, but not quite getting there. If any of you have a math background, I do not, but I do remember the idea of the asymptote. It's the curve that's always approaching 0 but never gets there. That's what the flat 3rd is, going towards the major 3rd. Or, as a professor of religion that I had in college said, the spiritual life is metaphorically an asymptote. Are we going to meet God? Yes. When? Never. So that's what the flat 3rd is doing. It's going towards the major 3rd, but it's never getting there, and that's what makes it sound cool. So anyway, so putting those sounds in. Even there, a little bit of a quarter tone bend. Even though we're on the 4 chord there, again, that's a flat 3rd. It wants to kind of push towards the major 3rd. And this flat 7 still wants to kind of push towards the root. So just doing that, it's the difference between, so, and it just makes it feel more musical. And then finally, also we can, we can continue this idea of the cumulative phrasing, right? So we've got this answered by this, and then go back to our original phrase, but draw it out. Now, we've gone through half of the form, the first 4 bars. Let's go back, let's take our original phrase one more time, play the longer version we just played over the A chord, and then add another bar to that. So last lick sounds long and complicated and hard to remember if you were trying to memorize it, but the first half of it we already did. Just now we're doing it over E. So here's our opening phrase, drawn out to a whole bar. And now on the B7, we're going to play another 8 notes. And so the whole solo has this, like, it just keeps building on itself and it keeps giving you unexpected things as you go. So, opening phrase, short answer, longer, landing on the root of A, and now repeating that, and extending it. Okay, so that's the third step, is adding those slides and blue notes and then extending the last lick. And what I'm playing is, so flat third, root, 5, flat 7, 5, 4, and then 5, flat 7, 5, flat 5, 4, 5, flat 3, root. And one other idiomatic thing I'm doing, besides the articulations, is adding in the flat 5. Right? So the only difference between the minor pentatonic scale and the blues scale is the addition of the flat 5 when you play the blues scale. So minor pentatonic coming down, root, flat 7, 5, 4, flat 3, root. Blues scale coming down, root, flat 7, 5, flat 5, 4, flat 3, root. Okay? So the transcription that's in the link, the PDF, is basically the solo I've just played. So if you want to work on using the pentatonic scale with the cumulative phrasing and the idiomatic moves like the quarter tone bends and the blue notes, there's a transcription of the solo I just played, and you can take that and use it as a model for how you... It would help if I played the right bass note. Right? And one last thing about the cumulative phrasing. Once you've played that last long phrase, if you want something to answer that long phrase with, because you've got 2 bars left at the end, right? We're only through bar 6 when we get to the end of, you can just take the last 4 notes of the longest phrase you've played and just repeat it over the B chord. So from E, 1, 2, repeat. Right, so I'm just taking this and repeating it. So that's a nice way to kind of just put a little button or a little like conclusion on what you're doing. So that's the first idea, cumulative phrasing and going minor pentatonic, target the roots, and slides and blue notes. So let me pause and take a breath because there's a lot of ideas. So hopefully that much of it makes sense. And like I said, that in and of itself is plenty to work on. But let's move on now. And let me talk a little bit about the next of the 3 big ideas, which is chord tones. And I always forget to mention this at the beginning, and I don't know if anybody's posted this yet or not. But yes, so this particular lesson will stay archived on the YouTube channel for a while. So you should be able to go back and look at it. I know there's a lot blowing by. Keep knocking on the microphone. Sorry about that. There's a lot blowing by, and you should be able to watch it again. And also, as I mentioned in my email out this morning, why is my computer dinging and ringing? Let me turn and close all the other windows. This is the only window I care about right now. A lot of these ideas I'm presenting are ideas that I talk about in my membership at the Fingerstyle 5, which is a monthly sort of progressive way to work through a tune a month, always basically in this idiom, like blues, alternating thumb, steady bass, and just looking at sort of the 5 main things you need to work on to develop as a fingerstyle, solo fingerstyle blues guitar player. Basically, right hand coordination or groove, chord voicings in the left hand, repertoire, arranging, and improvising. So I thought I would spend this lesson just focusing on improvising, just as a general thing, but also because that's something that I talk a lot about in there. And these are some ways you can kind of organize your thinking about improvising, which I think is important because improvising can feel so hard to grasp, right? It's so abstract. It's improvised, right? But there is you listen to the great improvisers and you hear this sense of structure and you hear this sense of organization in their playing, and it's cool. So this is a way you can start to intentionally play improvisations that have some structure to them. Because even if you play this on purpose and you play worked out licks at first and it feels like you're not improvising, if you can focus on the phrasing and the landing points of targeting the roots, that will slowly become more intuitive, and you will find yourself playing more this way without thinking about it quite so hard. That's the idea. So if you can absorb not just the notes to choose, but the phrasing of the notes and the landing points of the notes and the idiomatic gunk on the notes, those are things you can work on consciously, and they will slowly sink into your playing that way. Okay, next section, chord tones. So we've talked about using the minor pentatonic. Let's talk a little bit now about using the major pentatonic. So in E, that would be E, F sharp, G sharp, B, C sharp, and E. Excuse me. So that's the root, major second, major third, fifth, sixth, and root. All right, so the most important thing that we can pull out of this right now is the major third on the E, this note, right? Now, like I was talking about on the B chord, a lot of times on the blues, just hitting the major third sounds a little square. You want the sound, just like you want the sound of the flat third bending towards the major third. If you're going to play a major third outright, you want the sound of it being approached from the flat third, either slowly, like B.B. King, or quickly, like T-Bone Walker. So a quick hammer-on from the flat third to the third, or as part of a triplet phrase, 1 and 2 and 3 and or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So that's the same phrasing we started off with. So I'm just going to drop that in. So instead of having very minor pentatonic sounding, 5th, flat 7, and root, I'm going to start with flat 3, 3, 5, root. But what if I just keep going with my answer phrase? Well, now I know what I'm going to start with next because I'm going to take my opening phrase and extend it. So already, if I come up with a good idea at the beginning, I've done most of the heavy lifting for the entire 8-bar chorus because I know I'm always going to be kicking off from whatever my opening idea was. So that's just adding in the major third and then using the cumulative phrasing idea. So it sounds a little out of place on the B7 chord, but I go right into the blues sound over the 4 chord, which always sounds good. And now here I'm basically leading back into the 1 chord. so that's the fourth idea. The fourth step is adding the major pentatonic, and specifically so you can get the major third. Okay, now on to the fifth idea. This is something that I like to think of as the swing scale, and it's just a way of thinking about what happens when you take advantage of all of the notes in the major pentatonic scale at the same time as all of the notes of the blues scale, all from the same root. So E major pentatonic, E blues. So if we take these E major pentatonic notes and we overlay them with these E blues scale notes, we get a total of this. Which is super cool. And it gives us access to a lot of the notes that you hear when you listen to swing guitar players, well, swing anything players, but I learned them first from this sound first from listening to Charlie Christian. So I think of this as the swing scale or the Charlie Christian licks or whatever you want to call it. So we've got the root, the major second from the major pentatonic scale, the flat third from the blues scale, the major third from the major pentatonic, the fourth from the blues scale, the flat five from the blues scale, the fifth, which both scales have, the sixth from the major pentatonic, flat seven from the blues scale, and the root, which they both have. Now, a sort of shorthand for this is just to jump right from the root to flat 3, 3, 4, flat 5, 5, 6, flat 7. So basically leaving out the second, but then, because it's very guitaristic in this position, to go straight over from the root to the flat 3. But then think about putting this note back in on top, which makes it technically the ninth, because it's above the seventh. So you can think of it as the ninth, and you can think of it as the second too, but it gives you that idea of those sort of swing licks that are sort of verging on bebop licks. That's where they come from. Right? But what we're going to use this for is not quite that busy. We're just going to look at how to... but now, we could also do the flat 3 up here. And we could also have the sixth over here. Grab that from the major pentatonic and use the major third, the root, the sixth, and the root. And we're approaching the major third from the flat third. Which works, and it's really cool, but it's very different from, which is a much sort of darker Delta blues kind of thing. This is like a swing feel thing almost. It's very bright, but it still sits and sounds good over the steady bass. And the other thing we can do with this is we can also go, the flat third needs to go somewhere. So it can go up to the major third, or it can go down to the major second or the ninth. Which is a sound you hear a lot too. So that's step 5, adding in these other notes of the swing scale basically to the major third that we've added already. So we've got the ninth and the sixth. And it's no coincidence that you hear swing musicians and swing tunes talking about having ninths and sixths in the chord. Because those are the notes that brighten up the blues scale and make it sound a little less dark and a little more song-like, but you can still retain the blues feel if you keep the flat thirds in there. stick to the minor pentatonic, you can bring back all that blues feel. And that's important because I remember when my friends and I started, we worked on, like, my best friend and I, Peter, we were really into blues, and we were listening, in high school. We were like, sort of that thing of like, well, here's the Beatles. Oh, and here's Cream. Oh, and here's B.B. King. Okay, now and here's Buddy Guy. Sort of, the thing you do where you work your way backwards. And then both of us, when we got to college, wanted to study music, and there wasn't really a way to study blues, so the closest thing was to study jazz. And so it's like, oh, let's go study jazz. And the thing that what happened to me, and what happened to what's happened to a lot of students that I've had teaching in the past, is they didn't necessarily work on jazz because they liked jazz. They worked on jazz because they had learned pentatonic scales, and they figured there had to be something else to work on. So they started working on playing jazz, but it didn't come out of a thing of like really being into jazz necessarily. Just this idea that like, well, jazz is like graduate school for playing blues, which is kind of true and kind of not true. But so whenever I get into showing these jazzier ways of thinking about improvising, I always want to make sure that you understand there's a way to pull it back into a blues sensibility, so that you can add those flavors to your blues playing without worrying that you're going to end up playing Girl from Ipanema by accident, which it's a perfectly lovely tune. But if that's not what you're looking for, you don't have to worry that's where this is going. This is just adding some swing and jump blues colors into playing more of a steady bass kind of groove. So that's step 5. Adding in the ninths and the sixths. And then step 6 is to look at what this can do for us on the 4 chord. Because so far all we've done is stick to pentatonics. We've targeted the root, and then we've added in these brighter swing scale licks over the 1 chord, but kept playing basically pentatonic over the 4 and the 5. But let's look at what you can do with the 4, because the swing scale opens up a couple of really important notes for when we're on the 4 chord. First and foremost, it opens up the major third of the 4 chord, right? This note here, C sharp, which is the 6th of the E scale, is also the major third of A. And the 9th over here of the E scale is also the 6th of an A chord. So you put all of this, now instead of just landing on the root, we can actually spell out all kinds of A licks using just that vocabulary of the swing scale, which again is just overlaying the E blues scale and the E major pentatonic scale. And so it's just looking at the chord and going, well, where are the chord tones? Oh, there's the root. There's the 3rd, there's the flat 7. And so you can now get a whole collection of what I think of as Charlie Christian licks. Over the A chord. Right? And the thing that's really great about those Charlie Christian style licks is that they sound really kind of busy and florid in a good way over the A chord, right? Because it's like this stream of eighth notes. It's got this great drive to it. But if you bail out at the right moment into the major third of E, then it sounds like you were heading somewhere, not just being busy, right? So landed, okay, which is a great idea, really effective. And notice that I went longer than the 1 bar of A licks. This is like a landing point, but then don't remember exactly what I played. Something like that. And really what that is that's a couple of ideas. That's an idea of taking this A lick that lands, again, this chromatic idea is the exact same phrasing we've been doing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Right? So, and then, now what that is for the second half of the A chord, it's playing an E blues lick. And there's two things about that are important. One is that E blues always leads back to the 1. So whether you're on the 5 chord, playing E blues takes you from 5 back to 1. Just playing E blues over the 5, it resolves to 1. It just sounds like it's going somewhere. Same thing over A. So you can always get away with playing E blues over the 4 and the 5 as long as you're landing back on 1. And when you do land back on 1, if you make a point of nailing the major third of the 1 chord, it's that much more effective. So right? There it is. Or that's just sort of an extra idea there on the 4 chord, is you can spell out the 4, or you can just play blues on the 4 as long as you resolve back and get to 1. So that's ideas about chord tones. So that's the second big idea. The first big idea was the cumulative phrasing. Next big idea is the chord tones. And so under chord tones, we've got major pentatonic and the swing scale and the Charlie Christian licks. So finally, let's check out the idea of chord voicings. So this is the idea that you can now also punctuate your single note playing with some chord notes, some chord hits, even some sort of walking moves that involve moving chord voicings. So let's start with just some 7th chords on the top 3 strings. And again, I talked about this in the Dominant Dozen. You can go look for that lesson. It was another live stream. And there's a handout that goes with that, like a PDF you can download, just about how to identify 7th chords on the top 3 strings. So we can start with something like this, where we're going to land on a 7th chord. We can even, again, give it some flavor, right? By like not just playing, but slide into it from a half step below. Right? So just knowing that you can get E7 in a variety of places, here, or here, or here, or here, or here, means you can punctuate. Again, same phrasing, and 4 and 1. But now we can take that and kick off the solo. And I'm playing, again, I'm using the swing scale here, the 5th, the 6th, and the root. Still using the cumulative phrasing, I'm just landing on some chords. You could grab the top of the B chord as a whole sound. You could grab the top of A7 just in open position, or right, you could do some of the, again, that's like the idiomatic thing, right? That's some blues moves. And then again, but a little goes a long way. You don't need to play chords all the way through. Now you could, in the last live stream, talking about House of the Rising Sun, I talked about the idea of a shout chorus, like playing through the first half of the form using all chords. So So, that's one way to punctuate things. And I did kind of sort of a classic like country blues cheat, which is instead of worrying about barring the B7 like this, I just left the open A, which is the flat 7 of the B7 chord. Which you'll hear, I guess like Leighton Hopkins and Mance Lipscomb and people like that do sometimes. So that's idea number 7, which is using 7th chords on the top 3 strings to punctuate things, and approaching them by half step is the other part. And then again, the cumulative phrasing can just kind of carry on from there. Okay, so idea number 8 is using Freddie Green chord voicings. Now these are the ones that are on the 6th, 4th, and 3rd string. So, and again, these are spelled out. I think I did them in the key of A, but you can transpose them in the handout for the dominant dozen. I've got these Freddie Green voicings in the mix as well. So I've got the root and the flat 7 and the 3rd here, all on the 6th, 4th, and 3rd string. The 3rd, the root, and the 5th. And then the 5th, the 3rd, and the flat 7. And then the flat 7, the 5th, and the root. So I'm not going to use all of them, but just as an example, so a couple of ideas there. One is the idea that you can walk up from 1 to 4 or from 1 to 5. And that's a really common move. There's the 1 chord. Now I'm substituting in a B7, that's the 5. So that's a passing chord from 1 to 5. You can rock back and forth between 1 and 5. I actually talked about this in a lesson called Old School Blues Chord Substitutions, which you can go look for. It's somewhere here on Fretboard Confidential on YouTube. So 1 to 5. And here's a diminished chord, which is doing this chromatic passing thing up to, basically back to E. It's just a bunch of sort of showbiz to get you from this E to this E. So, but it's based on the idea that we want this walking bass line and we can harmonize it. Strings on the 1st fret, 2nd fret, 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 4th fret, 2nd fret, 4th fret. So, and then I'm just playing my stuff. And here's a walk down. And so here I'm going, I've got the A, fifth and root of A. Then I'm putting the flat 7 in the bass. And then I've got playing an F sharp minor 7 chord, which is the 2 chord in the key of E. So here's the root, the flat 7, and the flat 3rd. And then I'm going to a B7 with the 5th in the bass. Here's the 5th, here's the 3rd, here's the flat 7. Or you could go do a tritone substitution. Here's an F7 with the root, the flat 7, and the 3rd. So that's walking down. I'm just thinking bass line, and how can I harmonize it? And then the other thing that I did was a turnaround. And there I was thinking about the 1 chord, the 6 chord, C sharp 7, which is the 5 of the 2 chord, but I'm playing C7, which is a substitute for the 2, and then I'm playing the 5 chord, B7. So, same chord voicing sliding all the way down. And there's variations on this too. You could do this. So G7, F sharp 7, F7, and I'm kind of playing the high string all the way along the top. All kinds of variations you could do on that. But that lets you comes the walk down. So that kind of chordal color sort of pops in there. Okay, that was idea number 8, using the Freddie Green voicings. Idea number 9 is using ninths and sixths. And I mentioned this already in passing as sort of a swing-related sound in terms of the melody, but in terms of chords too, we can do that. Again, something I've talked about a bunch elsewhere in other lessons, but one simple place to start is on the 4 chord, because we've got a lot of time on the 4 chord. We can have this 9th chord, or you can just think of it as the top 3 strings if you want. But here's the root, the 3rd, the flat 7, and the 9 of E, of A. And then here's an A6, root 3, 6, and root. It's kind of the B.B. King 6 chord. And then that slides down a whole step to become the 9th, the 5th, and the flat 7. And then here's another A6 with the root 3rd and 6th, and that goes down a whole step to become the flat 7, the 9, and the 5th. So that whole collection of sounds. So so it's dropping in there. And so now we've got so many different chord choices, starting with just our single phrase at the beginning, and then there's the 7th chord, and then one of these Freddie Green chord turnarounds. That's idea number 9. It's using ninths and sixths. Okay, so first big idea, the cumulative phrasing. Second big idea, using chord tones. Third big idea, using chord voicings. 7th chords, Freddie Green voicings, which are also 7th chords, and 9th chords and 6th chords. So the last idea is just the idea of building a solo, right? So the idea that you could have a solo that slowly evolves, so it feels like every chorus something new is happening. And the simplest way to start is just to add these elements in the order that we've been talking about them. So take a chorus that's just doing that cumulative phrasing with the minor pentatonic. So thinking about minor pentatonic, targeting the roots, using slides and blue notes. Next chorus, add in the swing scale. So get some major pentatonics going, get the major 3rd of the 1 chord, get the 6th and the 9th going on. Use those notes to spell out those 4 chord Charlie Christian style licks. And then in the 3rd chorus, add in some chord hits, maybe a chord walk with the Freddie Green voicings, maybe a 9th chord or a 6th chord here or there. And that would give you a real natural build to what you're doing. So if I just start to do all that, here's 3 choruses that kind of do that in order. Okay, so that would be just moving through each one of those moves. So what I'm going to do now, because it's, good Lord, it's been an hour exactly. Look at that. If you've got questions, I'm going to play another few choruses where I'll just start from that point of view and just kind of go wherever those different elements seem to lead me. And then if you've got questions, I'll stay on for an extra 15 or 20 minutes and answer questions if you've got them. So we'll just play a little bit more. There's a bit of a delay between the video and the chat. So I'll just go through a few more choruses of Key to the Highway. And if you've got questions, post them now, and I will try to get to them. Here we go. Okay, so it turns out, I looked up while I was playing, and my chat died about 45 minutes ago. And I'm not sure what'll happen if I restart or anything like that. So I'm not sure. I can't at the moment see any chat, which is sort of a bummer. So I'm trying to figure out what I need to do about that, because I would imagine there might be some questions at least. So that's a bit of a technical snag, isn't it? Let me see if I open up another window. We'll see what happens. It's a little bit awkward. Yeah, if it happens, it happens. Let me see if I can rejoin my own thing. And if I can't, then we'll just call it a day, and I'll read all the comments in the chat afterwards. Give me a second here. And let's see if I can rejoin my own thing here. Videos. And oh, okay, that's where I need to go. This is really silly. How's that going to work? What happens if I just try to go to it now? Maybe this will work. I might have found a way to cheat the system. Ah, here we go. I got him. Okay, so let me just scoot up here and take a look at the chat real quick and see if there's questions. And if not, then we're done, and that's all good. Questions. Okay, I see some questions about where to find the membership, which is different, but there should be a link below this video for that. Oh, good. Anton says the Freddie Green chords and the 9/6 chords are what he was looking for. Great. Let's see. Just looking to see if there's any questions. I'm a new member. I want to learn key to the highway, trouble in mind. Okay, so Jamie says, I am a new member. Welcome, Jamie. And I want to learn Key to the Highway and Trouble in Mind. But later this week you start a new song. What do you recommend? I would say to kind of go with whatever the current lesson is in the membership. But those other songs, this video is archived now, or will be in a minute. And Trouble in Mind is archived too. So I would say prioritize the current song in the membership so that you can post it and, be talking about it with people as they're working on it too. But, if you have the time, then go back and work on, add one of those other songs into the mix. It just sort of depends what your learning style and speed is. Michael Turner, could we get just a bit more clarity about the notes in the swing scale? And I do think you mean the swing scale, not the sewing scale, although I would want to learn the sewing scale. There's a Zoot Suit joke in there somewhere, but I'm going to try not to make it. So the swing scale is that's my invented name for what you get when you overlay the major and the minor. Either the major pentatonic, the minor pentatonic, and the flat 5, or the major pentatonic and the blues scale. So it's the root, 2, flat 3, 3, 4, flat 5, 5, 6, flat 7, and root. Those are the swing scale notes. And I don't know when that question came in. It may have been before I actually talked about this. Am I thinking, okay, this is Ravi is asking, are you thinking modally at all when improvising? Not in the sense of the way they teach you how to play so what when you study jazz in school. I'm not thinking like, I'm on a minor 7th chord, so I'm now playing Dorian. I mean, I guess modally in the sense that another way of thinking of the swing scale is that it's like a Mixolydian scale with a flat 3rd and a flat 5th, right? Mixolydian is root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, root. And then if we add in the flat 3rd and the flat 5, so that's, I guess, another way of thinking about Mixolydian with the blue notes, flat 3 and flat 5. But I'm really thinking in terms of what chord am I on and what chord tones would sound good on that chord, and then what would help me resolve to the chord I'm on my way to. So I'm thinking much more about how am I going to resolve than about what chord am I on. And I think this is important. And it's kind of implied in what I said about phrasing, but I didn't really spell it out. The way I was taught jazz in school was basically to react to each chord with the appropriate mode. So you see a D minor 7 chord, you think D Dorian. You see a G7 chord, you react with a G Mixolydian scale. And then you see a C major chord, and you react with a C major sound. The problem with that is you're always reacting to the chords, which means you're always a beat or two late, right? You're basically getting chased around the room by the chords. Whereas if you think in terms of what's resolving, where are you landing, we're ultimately this C minor 7 to G7 to D minor 7 to G7 to C is basically, it's just a moment of suspension before you get back to C. So there's a lot of ways you can resolve to C. One of them is right, which is to play that 2-5-1 idea. So D, G, C. But another way to think about it is just like what's gonna sound bluesy on C and resolve. So just playing the 2 chord. I played a little bit of the 5, but the idea is that to play that blues idea that resolves to C. So I'm not really thinking, I mean, it's one of those tricky things. It's like, yeah, I was taught to think modally, and so I'm aware of what's going on modally, but I'm thinking more what's going to resolve, what's going to sound cool what's going to make it feel like I led you to the new chord rather than what's going to make me feel like I got chased to the new chord by the chord progression. Okay, I hope that helps. Let me see if there are any more questions. If I didn't, I don't really see a whole lot more. But I will answer this question about the membership, which is that you should see, I'm going to double check and make sure that it's there. If I can get there. Yeah, okay, I think I can do it this way. You should see a link below the lesson. Yeah, so just below the video you're watching right now, it says download the tab for this lesson, and there's a link, and you can download the tab for the cumulative phrasing example on Key to the Highway. And then right below that, it says learn more about the membership and how to sign up from now until 11 p.m. Tuesday, April 14th. And there's a link. So if you click on that link that says fretboardconfidential.com ... That'll take you to a page where I've got another video just explaining how the membership works, what you'll learn and what you'll work on, how much it costs. And then underneath that, there's a link to sign up. So it's $20 a month. That's no big mystery. And we work on 1 song a month. In the past, we've worked on tunes like House of the Rising Sun and Careless Love and Crow Jane. And I've also written some tunes that are very similar. It's kind of like I've written some original blues tunes just to illustrate, well, let's work on this kind of thing this month. And then, if you have any of my True Fire lessons or you've seen some of those things like the New School Fingerstyle Blues or the Fingerstyle Blues Handbook or the Steady Bass Take 5. It's kind of stuff in that vein. Just instrumental blues that kind of have that kind of mix of blues and jazz sensibilities and use either the steady bass or the Travis picking to get it done. So that's kind of what that's about. The idea is you work on a simple or a more elaborate version of the tune the first week. So I'll give you 2 versions of the song, one that's really basic if you're just starting to get your thumb and your fingers together, one that's more advanced if you're got more of a repertoire kind of under your belt already and you want something a little harder to work on. And then the second week, you'll get a bunch of exercises to help you work through that tune and work really to focus on your groove and your right hand coordination, because that's really the first big stumbling block for most people with fingerstyle is like just how do you get your thumb and your fingers to be in the right place at the right time. So the second week, the exercises are mostly just to focus on that, the syncopation, the coordination, all that stuff you need to work on your right hand. The next week is a bunch of improvisation exercises. So if you're ready to start embellishing the tune yourself and working things out, working on the kinds of things I'm working on right now in this lesson, then there's some exercises to help you work on that. Scale exercises, coordinating the scale with the thumb, what the phrasing can be like for that, and all that sort of thing. And then the fourth week, I do a live session like this, but it's just for people in the membership. So if you like this format and this kind of live thing where you can ask questions and where I can kind of expand on the ideas more, we do a lesson that's all about the song that month, but I'll talk about how to arrange the song, kind of like I did in the House of the Rising Sun lesson I did here on YouTube a couple days ago. So over the course of the month, you get, this is the song to work on, these are the coordination and right-hand groove issues, these are the improvisation issues, and then these are the arranging issues. So as you go through it each month, you get a new piece of repertoire, yay, which is fun, you get a new song to work on. And then you get to work on the specifics of how to get better at playing that song. And in the process, so you're getting the fun part, which is a new song to work on. You're seeing other people in the forum, because there's a private forum just for the membership. You're seeing people work on that song also, which really helps because it's on some level it's inspiring. You can see people that are really killing it and like doing a great job with the song, and you can also see people who are working really hard just to get the basic part of it down, and that can really help because you're like, oh, I'm not the only one who's struggling with this, or I'm not the only one who hates wrapping my thumb around for the F chord, or whatever it might be. So that kind of helps people see that they're part of a group of people trying to work on this thing. It takes away a little bit of the what should I work on, because that's another thing that I know is a big question, and people like often respond to either the YouTube lessons or the TrueFire lessons with like, okay, I have your course on this or I have that. Like what order do I work on it? How much do I work on it? Like, what am I supposed to do here? So the idea was to just say, look, if you like playing fingerstyle blues and you want to play solo instrumental blues, it doesn't matter if you're like a super professional guitar player or you just want to be able to play sitting around on your porch, just like amusing yourself. You know, if you want to play instrumental fingerstyle guitar, here's this takes some of the guesswork out of it. Like, we're going to work, I'll just tell you like, hey, we'll do this song. And, you know, there's a simple version if that's what you're ready for. There's a complicated version if that's what you're ready for. And then and as far as like, how should I practice, which is the other huge question, you know, how should you practice? Well, you should start with the tune the first week. And then the next week you should work on the right hand coordination to make sure that's solid. And then the next week you should maybe think about improvising. But if you're not ready for that, you should keep working on the right hand coordination for another week. And then, you know, if you've got that together, then you should probably then think about how to build the song out into a couple of choruses or a few choruses and how to start improvising on it. But if you're not ready for that, it doesn't matter. There's plenty of people that just learn the basic version every month and they're cool with that. That's as far as they get. But all the improvising information is there if you're ready to kind of chew that up too. So that's a bit of an idea of what it is and what it's for, which is to help you kind of have a place to go to work on this style of playing without having to invent and think about the whole process yourself. I've kind of tried to do some of that for you and say, here's an order in which to do it. Here's a way in which to do it. Try it out and see if it works for you. Okay, question or comment, I guess, from Wim. I hope I'm saying that right. It would be fun if we could do a small session where my skills could be assessed and you can get pointers on what to work on. Yes. Particularly as the membership grows. It's funny, I've noticed not everybody even wants to post. Not everybody even posts their work in the forum. Those people who do, I make a point of weighing in myself and just talking about what looks like it's working and what isn't. So far, well, two things. I don't always get to everybody's video, which is, you know, lame on my part. And I hope in this new round to do better at that. But I try to comment on everybody's at some point. And then also, I tend to mostly stress the positive because it's like that old thing of like, you know, everybody's aware of their own, everybody's like voice in their head of like how, of all the things they're doing wrong is like ragingly loud. But you know, so I try to emphasize the things that are working so far. But I have had some people say, hey, don't sugarcoat it. I'm here because I want to learn. I want to know where I should put my efforts. So don't hold back. Just tell me everything, you know, tell me anything good or bad about what I'm playing. I really want to know. So going forward, I will kind of inquire if that's, you know, you can let me know when you post your stuff, if like you want the, you know, the warts and all version, or you just want the cheerleader version. And I'm happy to go either way because I'm all for encouraging people. I'm also all for helping people get as much information they can about what would help. And the beer was from the Belgium, not the Netherlands. Oh, my bad. I know that, I know it's not cool to mix up all those European countries. I always tell people, I mean, everybody in Austin thinks I'm from New York. I'm from Boston. And from the Texas point of view, New York, Boston, what's the difference? I'm a smart alecky Yankee either way. So I apologize for not getting that straight. Okay, let's see. Anton, if I may jump in, the lessons are geared towards learning all that. Oh, okay, you guys are chatting about the lessons amongst yourself. Dave H. Hey, that's my name. I am still struggling with keeping groove going with right hand thumb when playing melody. Should I try to perfect this before joining the membership? I'm with Anton. I would say jump in. Again, there's plenty about that to work on. And as you work through the tunes, you will get practice working on the coordination in various contexts. And you will, you know, it'll keep you moving forward. rather than sitting and trying to perfect one song and feeling like it's not happening. You'll at least be getting exposed to some different repertoire, some different keys, and some different approaches, whether it's steady bass or alternating thumb. Yeah, if it feels like you're in over your head, you can. I mean, it's there's a pretty liberal cancellation policy. So if you get in and you realize it's you feel like you're in over your head, or it's more discouraging than encouraging, just the amount of work, then you can change your mind. But I feel like you should be able to take the material at whatever level feels good to you. But you can also, over the next day and a half, if you've got specific questions, you can email me, and I will be glad to answer those questions more specifically if you've got something particular about it that you're curious about. Okay, I'm just going to look and see. We'll go till 4 o'clock, I guess. I'm just looking to see if there's any earlier questions. Or if you still got one, drop it in here. This looks like it's just... Oh, okay. Here's one from Tybor. I'd love to see a lesson on that upstroke string brushing thing you do. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's definitely an idiomatic thing. And I don't know if I've ever tried to teach that. Jim C. is here. Hold that thought, Tybor. Here to talk about how much he likes Blues Architect. I knew that because you've mentioned that before. But Jim, great to see you here. Okay, Tybor. So, yeah, I don't think I've done a lesson on it, but in brief, it's a kind of anticipation I get, and I have no idea where this comes from. It might be like a Roy Bookbinder thing when he's playing a rag, because he does snap the strings, but I don't know where. But it's basically it's a drag. And you sort of, the hand position kind of rolls like this. And so... if you wanted to work on it, I guess you could just alternate doing a pinch and think of it as a triplet, or as four, like really fast. I don't even know what those are, if they're 16ths or 30 seconds, but think of it as a pinch, so one, ba-da-da-da, 2, 3, ba-da-da-da, 4, right? So that's really what it is. And the index finger is just kind of rolling back, and I'm dragging. I'll try to angle the guitar so you can see. It's dragging back like that. I think it's the index finger. Yeah. So I think it's 3 or 4 strings and into the thumb. That's the idea. So all that idiomatic stuff, right? That's what makes it sound groovy. And everybody's got their own little things, right? And you can kind of pinch them here and there from other people, and then eventually, let me see. We may have disconnected there for a second. I think it's just the index finger. I don't think it's multiple fingers. Okay, so I think this may have dropped out for a second, but it does look like we're back. I think I'm gonna wrap it up there unless you've got other questions. Thank you so much for being here. The registration for the membership is open until tomorrow night, until Tuesday night at 11 p.m. Central. The links to check it out are below. If you have more questions about material in this lesson, after the lesson, well, you can go to, where can you go? You can go to davidhamburger.com to email me. And I think you can also email me directly from fretboardconfidential.com. But if you leave a question below in the YouTube, I'll definitely see it and I can answer it there for sure. Okay, well, let me play a little bit more and then I will roll out of here. I hope that answers everyone's questions. I really appreciate everybody showing up and saying hello. It's nice to see so many people from so many places. I'll play a little more Key to the Highway and get out of here. So thanks again for being here, and we'll talk soon. All right. Thanks for being here, and